rock and roll rehab.
Some kind of monster.
They do this and this and this. But now this family of four is doing this.
Well, maybe I'm disappointed in myself. Talk about that, and what does that mean?
I'm prepared for the worst. I don't want to pick a fight.
Tonight, an exclusive interview with the four members of the heavy metal band Metallica, and why they turned to group therapy to stay together and battle a few inner demons. All of this conversation is the sort of thing you would think you'd hear on Oprah.
Up next, the heavy metal band with some heavy mental issues.
I am not interested in playing music with you if you're not happy in it.
Well, I guess the playing part, being in the room, and then mainly being in the room with Lars, playing music together, I guess I had higher expectations.
How the group that plays together tries to stay together with a little help from group therapy when Deborah Norville tonight returns.
Here's something we don't talk about too often on this program, heavy metal music. But in a moment, you'll see why we decided to do a story about Metallica. They're doing something so unique and so different that, frankly, we couldn't pass up the chance. First off, who are they? Well, since 1981, Metallica has sold more than 90 million albums around the world. They've won 6 Grammy Awards, and they've got a huge fan base. They've also established themselves as the macho, hard-partying monsters of rock.
Some kind of monster. Some kind of monster.
They may be monsters, but the band members are in desperate need of help, and they sought it. And all of it was documented in a new film which opens today called Metallica, Some Kind of Monster. It's a behind-the-scenes look as the band struggles to stay together while recording their 11th album called Saint Anger. The filmmakers started following the band back in 2001, and cameras were rolling as one member called it quits, another headed off to alcohol rehab, and the band hired a full-time group therapist to help sort through its problems. Yes, group therapy for a heavy metal band. I sat down earlier this week with all 4 members of the band for their first primetime interview together to talk about the movie and about their personal problems. And joining me now are Robert Trujillo, Kirk Hammett, James Hetfield, and Lars Ulrich, Metallica. Nice to meet you all.
Hello.
I think anybody who goes to see this movie, Some Kind of Monster, is thinking it's going to be sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And what they're going to get is good communication skills, bonding, message statements, and motivation. What gives?
What's wrong with us? That's what they're going to see. What's wrong with us? You know, it's just a part of our evolution. It's a part of growing up, a part of a path in our lives. You know, we knew we came together for a reason, and the older you get, I think the more you realize how you need to work on relationships, and these relationships were most definitely worth working on.
Whose idea was it to take a step back and go, whoa, if we don't work on these relationships, this whole thing's going to fall apart?
Well, I think what happened was that in some way our former bass player kind of instigated it by announcing that he was leaving the band. In the meeting where we all knew it was coming, our managers suggested that we maybe have a mediator in there, a guy who could separate us, and it all went wrong. And this guy named Phil Toll, and as we spent time with him and we started examining why somebody like Jason would leave the band, we started realizing that there was a lot of things that were broken and a lot of communication that had not happened and a lot of just further that the relationships could go. So I think it happened kind of organically. It wasn't like we sat down and said, we need therapy or we need help or we need, you know, whatever. It just sort of, as we were exposed to the ideas of therapy and improving our communication, we really embraced it and took it to the next level.
I don't know, I guess the playing part, being in the room, and then mainly being in the room with Lars, playing music together, I guess I had higher expectations, and I don't know, maybe I'm disappointed in myself. Maybe, I don't know.
Want to talk about that? I mean, what does that mean?
I'm not enjoying being in the room with you.
But I am not interested in playing music with you if you're not happy in there. I just don't want to become a parody. Okay, so if you're not happy playing music with me.
It's hard for me to believe that you initially willingly embraced the idea of sitting down with an outsider and opening up and emoting about everything. That had to be a tough sell.
Well, I think the more you get into it, the more you realize how much you need it. And once the shell started cracking around us individually, there was no shutting it again. There was stuff from, obviously things within the band that we hadn't discussed for years. We just shut up because we wanted to keep things rolling and things are working. Don't say anything. But way before the band, childhood stuff that started, coming out, and it all started to make sense that, well, we are who we are because of what's gone on in our lives, and let's just embrace that with each other. And the more we get to know each other, the more we'll know why we are acting the way we are.
In the process of getting to know who you are individually, you also had to confront one another individually.
I mean, we're in moods and we're not going to get anything.
All you want to do is pick a fight, and
I don't want to pick a fight.
This is so silly. You're just sitting there going, I'm in a really pissy mood, and
I told you straight up that I was.
Right.
And what are you trying to do?
I'm not trying to do. You're just sitting there being a complete.
You're really helping matters.
What was that like for you? I mean, you guys were using every swear word in the book, and it's clear that there's a lot of unfinished business that you're finishing right then.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me the key thing about this whole thing is basically resolving everything that's gone on in your relationships in your life, and working to get to a place of confronting it. What you see in that film is not, the negative elements of the film is not radically different from what the previous 20 years were. A lot of power struggles, a lot of fighting for pole position, a lot of just being stuck in just one way of looking at something creatively and so on. And there was a lot of just resentment and unresolved stuff that came out in sort of like the first half of that movie. And then at some point there's a kind of a dramatic turning point, and then we start kind of getting along and things start getting better, and the therapy and the communication and all that is helping. But some of those scenes, I think it's probably pretty fair to say that they're just an extension of a lot of the dynamics in our relationship for the first 20 years.
I mean, at one point you are practically screaming at James. You say, I realize I barely knew you. And I understand at screenings the audience laughs at that.
I think they laugh because it's kind of a nervous reaction. When I've seen the film with one person, I've seen the film with 300 people. The more intimate you are when you're watching the fewer people have a tendency to kind of be a little more affected by this dramatically. Do you know what I mean? In larger groups, I think people are so uncomfortable and they're just not used to seeing that kind of thing play out on a screen in a documentary style, that the easiest place to go with their reaction is kind of laughter. But I think it's really a fear of kind of confronting how they're really emotionally dealing with what they're seeing,
All of this conversation is the sort of thing you would think you'd hear on Oprah. You guys are the biggest heavy metal band out there. And to hear these kinds of emotions being expressed by Metallica is somewhat surprising. Kirk, how do you explain this?
I don't know how to explain it, without having taking up 5 hours of your time. I mean, we just we arrived at this place because we had to. I mean, we had to do this because it was essential for the survival of the band. I mean, we really didn't have a choice. I mean, we had to embrace this because the other options were just unacceptable. The other side of it would be a total fragmentation of the band and probably us just falling apart and ceasing to exist. So I mean, we're put in a position where it was either, you know, confront these issues, you know, and come together or fall apart.
Not many people watching this network are members of heavy metal bands, but they are members of relationships. And if these two were the bickering parents, you played the role, it seemed to me, of the child who's just trying to help everybody get along, just smooth the rough edges. Did you frequently find yourself in the peacemaker position?
Well, what people don't realize is that
Kissinger.
Yeah. What people don't realize is that that's always been my position. You know, within the first 3 or 4 weeks I was in this band 20 years ago, I found myself in this position. It just never came to light because it was something that you know, we didn't really expose to the media. It was always behind closed doors. And this just so happens to be the first time that someone actually caught it on film and opened it up to you know, for everyone to see, really. I mean, this is territory that I've occupied for a long time and is nothing new to me.
Were you comfortable with it? Or did it eat you inside, always having to keep people from choking each other?
You know, I'm never comfortable with it, you know, but I am definitely calloused from it. I mean, it's turf that I've negotiated a million times before, and so it was nothing new to me, and so I've just learned to accept it because I think that if I wasn't there, and these guys were going at it, things would probably have been a lot worse a lot earlier in the band's career.
As you said, you were used to this. You've been doing it since you first came in the band, but what was different was having the cameras. Why did you agree to allow the cameras to document what was clearly the most traumatic period in both your professional and your personal lives? It's so intrusive.
I think the word trust, you know. Trust. We trusted Joe and Bruce. We knew we had a little bit of a relationship with them from the past, from Paradise Lost and so on. So to me, it was about trust. And in any kind of creative relationship, if there's trust, then you free yourself. And I think, you know, there was just, between the six of us, there was just a lot of trust.
Are there scenes in the movie that you wish had not been included?
Well, for me, those are usually the ones that really have to be in there, and they're, because I don't want them in there. It's a good reason that they should be in there, to expose the me that maybe I don't like. And you know, if we went through and edited all the parts that we didn't like in there, it'd be, you know, 10 minutes long. You know, and that's not why we made the thing. It's a great mirror for us. It's so great to learn about ourselves through this way. You know, this movie's really for us, and everything we've done in our career is really about our path, and we don't know why we're choosing this. We're just doing it, and to expose our most fearful times in life on a camera is so connecting. And I've tried to connect with this world for most of my life, and this is the ultimate in that, I think. To bare your soul to people, and then they can choose what they want to do with that. And then that's why, you know, someone like you says, I think I know you, and they feel comfortable with you, and I've always wanted to have people feel comfortable around me.
When we come back, what happens when one of the members of the band battles a drinking problem, and more on how they as a group dealt with the constant glare of the cameras. Continuing our look at the new documentary about the heavy metal band Metallica. It's called Some Kind of Monster, and it deals with the band undergoing group therapy in an effort to stay together as they record their latest album. I sat down the other day with the entire band for their first primetime interview together to talk about the film. And we continue now as we talk about how one band member dealt with alcohol and how they think this film will help them better connect with their fans.
Do you think people know you better now as a result of this documentary than they have through 20 years of Metallica music?
I think combined together, it's the ultimate connection. Because what we've done in our careers is another side of us. And it's it's the personalities we wish we were, I think, you know. And this film is showing us the way we really are and maybe don't want to be. So combined together, you get a pretty full spectrum of our personalities.
Rob, you're the new member of the group. You came in a couple of years ago, and part of your audition process is included in the movie. Once you made the band and you realized what was going on behind the scenes, did part of you think, what have I done?
Well, it was pretty interesting because I found out about the cameras and the therapist en route to my first audition. And the first day was pretty much just sitting around and reacquainting ourselves, and it was very interesting for me. At first it was a bit intimidating. Actually, en route was intimidating because I hadn't seen these guys in 10 years. And I know James back in the day was a pretty intimidating character. So to sit around a table with these guys and have James, you know, just share, you know, what had been going on internally with the band and himself, and reacquaint that way, I thought was pretty amazing, and it made things comfortable very quickly. And the cameras didn't freak me out so much. After an hour or so, I got used to it, and pretty much got used to these guys welcoming me into their world, and to check out the new material, which they probably would have never done in the past. You know, I mean, I wasn't officially in the band yet. I'm hearing, you know, unreleased, raw, you know, new Metallica music, which sounded incredible. And I think that was inspired also by what they had gone through. So,
James, early on in this, you disappeared. You left the band, you left the group, you left the picture, you went into an alcohol rehab program.
You know, all the other drinking and all the other junk that I was stuck in, it was so predictable, so boring. I'm out there looking for excitement, and all this stuff, the results are the same, man. I wake up the next day somewhere in some bed, I don't know who this person is next to me, and I'm drunk, completely hungover, and have a show to do, and the result is the same.
When you left the group, did you know if you were coming back?
I had no intention of not coming back, but I had no idea what was in the path in front of me. I knew I had to unplug from the world in a way, or the world that I had, as I had known it, and go in and just get completely real, get down to the core, strip down to just soul. And that's what they did. They helped me get there. And as a celebrity, famous person, that was always the excuse I used to not getting that kind of help. And I can relate to other celebrities that feel that. And but there are places that you can bare your soul and get real. And you know, we've all got the same size soul. And at the end of the day, when you're so desperate for help, you will really do anything you need to get that. And I know it was a big strain on these guys. It was a huge strain on my wife and children. But I really knew, and the more I was at the rehab center, that if I wasn't healthy, those other things were going to go away eventually again. And so it was an investment in all. But it took the unplugging. It took the, hey, I'm not this creation. I'm a human, and let's get real with that.
What's the lesson that you gentlemen have learned that you think is applicable to other people hitting their 40s? Responsibilities are looming large. They've been on whatever mouse wheel they've been on, and there's the Peggy Lee song in the back of their mind going, hey, is that all there is? You've all figured out how to answer that question. I know Peggy Lee you relate to a lot. But what's the lesson?
I like Peggy Lee.
Yeah.
I think the lesson is to not be afraid of embracing the people that are closest to you. That's what I've learned, and just be, you know, be interested and go to where the other person is and listen and open up and speak from the heart, and just life's too short to do anything else, and we spent way too long fighting that, and it feels so awesome to finally get a chance to do that and take it to the next level.
For me, communication, really, because I would always internalize a lot of things, and to finally, you know, just realize that that internalization was a part of the overall problem. I mean, was a big wake-up call for me.
Rob?
Same for me, same as Kirk. I mean, in my years of growing up, in my family situation, you know, there were rocky moments, you know, with my parents and stuff. And I think that maybe there were similarities in how I grew up, the same as the guys here. So for me to enter the world of Metallica and to have people like Phil around and to have my brothers here, you know, go through the same sort of thing, it was an incredible experience. And our future is bright now. You know, everything that we've been through and what they've been through is open the doors for the future of Metallica. It's great.
James?
Well, that there's really no past, no future, that there's just a continuous now, and make it the best that you can, and enjoy it, and embrace the things you have in your life. And the only way you can really change the past is by making now as best as it can be.
And finally, having gone through this process, is the music better, or is the process of making the music better?
You know, for me, the process is mostly why I do it. The end result is only the result of why you're doing it. I think making the music, when you're happy making music, you're gonna make the best music you can. And we've just discovered a new way of doing it. Maybe bands have been doing it for 100 years. We just discovered it after 22 years on how to do that.
Thank you so much for supporting Metallica through all the rough times and all the good times. Metallica loves you.
That was Metallica. When we come back, we'll be joined by the two filmmakers who followed the band around for 2 years and documented their therapy sessions. Back after this. Back now with our look at the new documentary on the heavy metal band Metallica, Some Kind of Monster. It's a revealing warts and all behind-the-scenes look at the band as it opens up and goes through group therapy to try to stay together. And even though the filmmakers knew the guys in the group and were promised complete and full access, when the cameras began rolling back in 2001, the band had its doubts.
We haven't really worked together for almost 9 months. When we were talking a couple of days ago about whether, you know, if we wanted to do this film or not, I was wondering if having these guys in here would affect that. Because there's an intimacy that you get when it's just a few people in the room, and I'm just wondering if that's gonna get lost, if we're gonna go back to sort of like battling each other and trying to be like all strong and...
What intimacy? You done?
I think, to me, it's not going to be a matter of whether the cameras are in play, but whether or not you guys are free enough to risk being seen by other people.
That, of course, was the therapist Phil Toll. 715 days later, the filming was complete, and Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, opens in selected theaters beginning today. I'm joined now by the two filmmakers, Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky. Gentlemen, this had to be one of the more bizarre projects that you ever worked on. How did it get started?
Well, the beauty of this film, it was a happy accident. We went out to San Francisco to film some promo footage. Elektra, the record label, wanted us to shoot some couple of weeks of B-roll, hand it off to the record label, and we thought it was going to be a little gig in between our big films. And we didn't dream it would turn into our next big film. And I think that's why the film is so authentic, because it was unplanned. You know, in this age of reality TV, where things are so self-conscious, so contrived, you know, if we had sat down with these guys and said, hey, let's do this intense film where we tear apart your psyches and then you'll heal yourselves and triumphantly take the stage at the end of the film, they would have thought we were crazy.
If you would have planned something like this, it never would have come off. But there actually was, Bruce, a period of time where the record label thought, reality TV, we'll do our version of the Osbourne family, and it'll be great.
Yeah, that's what really started. When the record started coalescing and they could see that there was a finish date, they rediscovered our footage as being something very special. And they said, why don't we try to make this a reality show and make it another Ozzy Osbourne thing, which was something that made our hearts sink, frankly. It was very upsetting to us. And the band, to their benefit and the intelligence that they have, said, you know what, we don't want to do that. We don't want to so overtly tie this very, very special material to the making of the release of our record, because we've never needed something like this before for the release of our record. So they said, well, we're not in the business of making movies, so what are we going to do here? So Metallica literally wrote out a $2 million check, for which is what Elektra had spent up to that at that moment, and said, we trust Joe and Bruce. They have a vision. We want them to pursue it.
But you didn't know what the vision was, and I'm guessing that having Phil told the therapist there, getting them to emote, getting them to share all this stuff, there must have been the producer bell in the back of your head going, this is way different. Well, we got to do something with this. I just don't know what.
You know, even though we started out as doing a promotional assignment, we knew from day one, you're sitting here with the icons of macho aggression, guys who are famous for being closed down and shut, whose whole image is about being a tough male and not talking about their feelings, sitting there emoting and trying to get to know each other. And at the same time, the band was also trying to democratize its music writing process. You know, they normally, James and Lars usually, outside of the studio, write the music and then come into the studio and dictate it to the other band members. And here they were going to open up the entire writing process.
Which is what we're looking at right here, is they're trying different things and everybody's putting their 2 cents worth in.
Right, and frankly, for James Hetfield, I would think that it's scarier to relinquish the writing process is even scarier than therapy, because in therapy, if it's not working out for you, you just clam up. If you clam up in the writing process, you relinquish control, and that would be scarier to me.
I also think that from the band's point of view, it would be very scary to have this very emotional side of themselves, because they are the heavy metal, hard-charging rockers, being revealed out there. They show their kids, they show their art collections, you see Kirk out there on the horse riding the planes. That doesn't look like heavy metal headbangers.
You know what? The film is very revealing about them, and once they decided to come down from the pedestal of hard rock icons and to show the soft underbelly of each of them, it was very refreshing for us. But it's because they trusted us and they knew us, and it was a gradual process, because these men have always controlled their image and controlled everything about the recording of their records, and for them to all of a sudden, undress in front of not only us, but ultimately what was going to be their fan base, it was potentially very, very dangerous, because we don't usually want to see our heroes in that way.
And there's no turning back.
There's no turning back, and the fact that they were willing to show themselves so vulnerable, so human, was very surprising to us, because the reason we wanted to do the film is for years we've been sort of very amazed by their onstage persona being so different than the men you would meet when they were off stage.
Do you think it's going to affect their music? Do you think going through this process is going to affect the Metallica sound?
Well, Saint Anger happens to be the most aggressive album they've done since their pre-Black Album days, and the music itself musically is going to actually remain as aggressive as it has always been, but it's lyrically now where the magic has happened. They are now for the first time looking within. They are looking for trying to harness the positive energy of anger and aggression, and a healthy way to channel that anger, and that's what the Saint Anger album is all about.
And what about the two of you? You can't spend 2 years with guys who are going through group therapy without probably having a little bit of group therapy on the periphery yourselves. Are you changed?
Frankly, Joe and I had many, many issues going into the making of this film. In fact, we hadn't made films together for a couple of years because we were both working on our own projects. And frankly, we had some issues very much the way James and Lars had issues about, there were credit issues, there were existential issues, there were just you get a little tired of being partners with somebody for 13 or 14 years. And frankly and honestly, if the Metallica film had not happened, we may not have made films together anymore. But going through therapy and listening to Phil and listening to James and Lars and Kirk, it started melting the iceberg that had formed between us. And frankly, the therapy sessions that they were going through, we were going through, and it saved our career.
There's a certain magic when people come together and collaborate that as you sort of move up the ladder, you forget about. And I think we had forgotten that you can't quantify what each person brings to the table, but when you throw people together, sometimes really cool stuff happens. Well, James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich coming together, they're two very different guys. They make this incredible music together, and we figured out how to get our act together, too.
Well, it's an incredible movie, and I think it's going to surprise a lot of people when they get a chance to see it. Good luck to you both. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much.
The movie's called Some Kind of Monster. Joe Berlinger, Bruce Sinofsky. Thank you. Coming up next, we're going to